So, going into this video, I want to share a little context. But first, yes, this is about a $12 million lawsuit Nintendo recently threw at the couple that ran the Love ROMs and Love Retro websites. This doesn't really seem like something many websites or people are covering, and I have some complicated feelings about it. Now, before you jump into the comments and say something stupid, like defending Nintendo, or saying I'm just an anti-Nintendo prick, or some random hater who's shitting on them for attention, whatever you think going into this video, just hang on. Distant shouts of fake news. Just try to watch first, let me have my say, then you can do whatever the hell you want. Just to avoid any problems for you, cause I will be fine. So, my first gaming experiences were Nintendo. It was Super Mario 64, it was Pokemon Yellow, it was Paper Mario. These games taught me to read, increase my vocabulary, I learned how to do math. All before I learned these things in school. The majority of my childhood was Nintendo. Their games pretty much shaped my life, whether it was my view of people as a whole, my beliefs, my morals, what I thought was important in life. I got all of that from Nintendo. Maybe some from an emotionally and mentally abusive household, but I've always loved Nintendo. And a part of me still does. But the part of me that's rational, the part of me that has morals, can't love Nintendo. And whether you do or not, that's entirely up to you. This video wasn't made to change anyone's viewpoint, merely shed a light on some key points and allow you, the viewer, to reevaluate your opinion and stance using information and facts. If you see all this and it doesn't matter to you, well, if you play games it should. But if it doesn't change your stance on emulation or on Nintendo, that's fine. It's only meant to inform and share a perspective. So, if you play games or are a normal human being below the ripe age of Windows 98, then you've heard of Nintendo. They used to make crummy card games, later tried other business ventures like a failed taxi service, and I think something related to food? They then settled on becoming toy manufacturers. They then ripped off Legos and a number of other popular toys, changing just barely enough to be legally safe. And then their toy business tanked eventually. They moved on to video games, and eventually a man named Shigeru Miyamoto made some famous games, became a huge figure in Nintendo, and they exploded into fame and fortune ever since. And when the games industry crashed years ago, Nintendo were the ones who brought it from the brink. Everybody knows this, which is one of the reasons why people say Nintendo gets this free pass, like they've always been the good guys. But really, this was actually just luck on their part that another company held back their console release. They've quote-unquote revolutionized the industry a number of times. By that I mean they took other people's ideas, used them either illegally or abused the shit out of loopholes in the law to get out of issues. They are incorrectly credited with a lot of revolutionary concepts and designs that they actually ripped from other, less popular developers that people hadn't quite heard of. And using their larger fan base made it look like they're the only ones capable of doing something unique, good, and Nintendo's favorite word, innovative. They were the video game equivalent of art thieves and YouTube video thieves, basically. Now, Nintendo. They don't understand business, at least not long-term business. They don't understand laws. They don't understand the concept of being decent human beings or role models. They don't understand technology, but they do know how to make games. I'll give them that full credit. They have almost always known how to make games. Old Shigsy is an asswipe of a human being, but he knows how to make games, or at least he used to. It seems like eventually he, and this goes for Nintendo as a whole, mind you, but he got so damn egotistical and full of himself that he got set in this one exact way of making games, this one minimalistic focus on one thing of these games, and he forgets there's other genres, other things games can do, other things they can utilize. He forgets there's more than one type of gamer, and says anyone who doesn't like this one type of game is delusional, doesn't understand games, has no taste, and is an idiot. He went from making some of the best timeless classics of gaming history to some of the shittiest concepts imaginable because he knows best. For the past couple years, Nintendo has floundered in the water, slowly sinking into this abyss of mediocrity, dragged down by their own hubris and lack of respect and open-mindedness. Damn, that sounded dramatic. Lately, they rekindled that spark that made Nintendo amazing with games like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, but I feel like that's all it was, this fleeting spark of what was. And then we would go back to this archaic, moronic version of Nintendo that is just so fucking pathetic, I'd rather they quit the industry. And, at the same time give their IPs to promising indie developers that have proven themselves. I mean, the people who made A Hat in Time can make 3D platforming Mario games really fucking well. I would be super happy if that were to be a thing. But, just saying, anyway, they could do that, or Nintendo can get their shit together. But this is Nintendo, so I get a distinct feeling neither of those will happen. In fact, the first one will probably happen before the second. So, with all that out of the way, let's discuss emulation. For those that don't know what that is, let me explain super quick. Emulation is simply using a program that acts as an old console and plays old games on stuff that is not the old console. These programs are called emulators, and these old games are called ROMs or ISOs. Let's simply stick to ROMs for the remainder of this discussion. They're basically the same thing, at least when you think of context and what they do. Anyway, these are games that are either incredibly hard to find, insanely expensive to obtain, like thousands of dollars for a piece of shit floppy disk, or actually impossible to obtain a physical copy and play it on a physical console, because the console is either literally melting or there's some other fuck up going on. Anyway, these emulators normally take years to make by people who are doing it out of passion for the good of the games and fans, and pretty much don't make any money off their hard work, other than the occasional optional donation, which is, I believe, legal? I mean, legally speaking, they're not getting paid to do it. They're simply receiving donations. Anyway, the ROMs are made by copying the data off a game disc or cartridge and changing a few background things to make them playable with these emulators on these things that are not the original console. Now, some of you at this point will have mixed opinions about emulation. It's stealing their games, it's piracy, and such. Allow me a moment to explain why it's not stealing, and it's not hurting publishers like Nintendo whatsoever. The biggest concern with emulation that these publishers claim is that it hurts their sales. This is an extremely easy excuse to debunk, and I can actually do it in one sentence. Ready? Here it goes. They don't produce or sell these games anymore, and they don't make a penny from stores selling used copies. So no, emulation does not, in fact, hurt sales. And if you're thinking, oh, well, what if they re-release it on, like, the Nintendo Virtual Console? I'll get to that in a bit, because, funny you should mention that. Now, the next excuse I see thrown about fairly often is that these people are making profits by selling these illegal games. Again, no. Ad revenue on these websites can't be making nearly enough to completely cover the what would have to be massive hosting bills and getting the owners a decent source of income. Also, statistically speaking, most gamers and tech enthusiasts, which are the bulk of these websites' traffic, are two of the biggest group users of AdBlock, I think, ever. As for donations, they are just that. I don't see people getting up in arms over donations to churches who, by the way, don't have to pay taxes and very often get their shit for free. Because religion. I don't see people getting up in arms about donations to museums or art exhibits. It's exclusively donations to websites archiving old video games. These donations are completely optional, and in fact, a lot of these websites don't even ask for donations, much less advertise that they even have a donation link, if they do at all. As such, these donations and poor ad revenue are probably just barely paying for the upkeep for these websites at best, and it's often costing the owners more than it's making them. Now, next up on the chopping block, people love to use the excuse that these games are protected by laws like IP protection and that they're products. This is kind of true, but this is a gray area, and I will explain why it doesn't really make as much sense as it should. Makes sense on paper, but when you think about it, it doesn't quite work. Anyway, this is, in my opinion, another piss-poor excuse for the industry, and here we go, let's get into it. These games aren't just products, they're culture, they're art. Did you know we have years and years and years worth of important music, film, artwork, sculptures, books, all of the things of media just gone, wiped from existence, all because nobody was archiving them properly. So much important culture and lessons from our past just gone because nobody wanted to think ahead and only wanted to abuse the law to immediately protect stuff, when there were laws to protect their work at all, that is. And unlike paintings or sculptures, they're an interactive medium. I think the first interactive medium, in fact. Correct me if I'm wrong, but normal archiving like museums for games just don't fucking work. This law that came out not too long ago that allows museums with permission to host servers given to them with permission for old games like MMOs, but only locally, not on an online network, but only locally LAN connection, is horseshit. It does not work. It fundamentally makes no fucking sense. It does not work, and that shows just how much lawmakers have no fucking idea what they're making laws about and what effects that has. MMOs don't work with just 12 to 25 people on the whole game. You can't get the same experience, that culture, learning what made that game truly tick like that, what made it popular, what it made it hated. It takes hundreds, thousands of players worldwide. I've really only seen this done with MMOs. I don't think this applies to your regular kind of game. And if it does, even then it wouldn't make sense. You go to a museum, you look at a sculpture, you look at a painting, you're not going to sit there for 8 to 200 hours looking at it. Okay? It does not make logical sense with our medium. It just does not work. There's a reason we don't have music museums, and when we do, it's more about the paraphernalia, not actually the music. It's about the people, not the music. That's why we don't have book museums. Don't say libraries. Those are not museums, people. I see you getting sassy in there. But anyway, moving on. Like I said, these publishers, they don't have the original code for these old games. They don't even have the code for actual consoles, people. The PlayStation Classic that recently came out is using an open source emulator found online for free, for fuck's sake. Nintendo itself has taken their old games as ROMs off the internet and sold them back to us on Virtual Console, and we have fucking proof of it. I mean, you can't have your pie and fuck it too, you know. So let's dissect the sentence that I just said, okay? Nintendo is suing people that they got a copy of their old game from for having copies of their old games, and then they are selling that copy back to us.
How the fuck does that make sense?
Morally, you can already see how fucked in the ass cheek that is. Speaking for the law, I'm pretty sure you can't really defend a practice. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a law expert, but I'm pretty sure if you're abusing the law, but you're trying to sue other people for abusing the same law, and then you get caught abusing that law as well, how does things play out? I don't know, I'm just saying. Anyway, you can't say it's hurting you while you sit there and profit from it. As for IP protection laws, on paper, yes, that works. Frankly, though, the laws are outdated as hell, and these companies are more than happy to milk that for all it's worth. So, not only do they not properly archive their works, they intentionally make it impossible for others to do so. Then they say it's hurting their business while they abuse it to make money basically for free off the labor of the people they are suing. We're going to make millions off your hard labor you did for free for the public, then strip it from the public and sell it back to them to make millions, and then sue you for millions and say you were screwing us. Thank you, Nintendo. The people who say Nintendo is in the right are only looking at what outdated laws say. Laws are meant to protect the common folk, the everyday citizen of America. And yet corporations like Nintendo are more than happy to fucking abuse the shit out of it. And if that wasn't bad enough, they are allowed to do it because they have deep pockets and lawmakers are either lazy, are getting bought out, or have no knowledge of what they're making laws about. And to make matters worse, not only are they allowed to do this, they're rewarded by the law to do it. And you have these dipshit people citing the law, applauding Nintendo for their actions. Now, let it be known that I don't condone people selling these ROMs or giving access as a paid service. I would be okay with that if, say, the publishers and developers received 5 to 10% of those sales, or whatever monthly payment they choose to do to get whole access to a console's ROM library. Anyway, not only does that sound fair, it allows both sides to coexist amicably and symbiotically and support one another. It allows them to not step on each other's toes, avoid issues like this, and also have easier access to games for archival purposes, and we then magically solve the issue of games needing better archiving solutions. And with all that said, I think $12 million for a lawsuit against a couple that didn't damage your sales, a couple your company profited off of without due credit or compensation, is not only outrageous, it shows just how manipulative, sinister, and basically evil Nintendo is. It really shows their true colors, as it were. Nintendo Red as a paint is actually named Blood of the Innocent. Theatrics aside, anyway, the couple won't actually have to pay that ridiculous amount. It'll be settled out of court for far, far less, probably. Maybe in the thousands or at worst, $100,000s. The 12 million is just this public number meant to scare people. Of course, if this gets settled in court, that number could become an issue, but it won't. Again, a prime example of Nintendo taking full fucking advantage of both the law and the fact that the couple isn't a filthy rich corporation like they are. And if you think Nintendo has any respect for the law or even cares about it, the laws state the use of emulation is legal if you have a physical copy of the game. Nintendo says that doesn't matter. To us, it's completely illegal no matter what anyone says, even the law, and we'll sue you if we find out about it. You can check their website for that little gem. So if they can't abuse the law, they denounce it as horseshit and ignore it. But if they can abuse the law, they milk it for all it's worth. And if you read their website about emulation, they also seem to think they can make their own laws out of thin air and lie about the actual law. Now, I think the law needs to be changed, and companies like Nintendo need to be stopped from abusing it like this. There's a difference from an actual malicious crime and actually doing a good deed. Because these games, they need archiving. And I don't see Nintendo doing it. I see them actively working against archiving their old content. That's what all these AAA publishers are doing. They're working against the archiving of the history of this industry. And I wonder why. It's not like they have done some shady or shitty or scummy things in the past. But that'll be for another time, won't it? Now, anyway, that's been my piece on this fiasco. I'll leave you to think about things on your own. If you want, feel free to discuss things in the comments. I may or may not chime in on occasion. Don't expect me to constantly reply to every question or thread. I'll ignore anything I've already answered, and honestly, I'm just a busy person. It's a bit of a shame, really, that this is the first episode for a show I've been working on. I've got a number of episodes scripted out already, but then this happened a couple days ago, and I felt I had to at least say something. Normally, the show is supposed to be funnier, less serious, occasionally educational about game development and the industry, and not in a boring way, I hope. It would be nice if I was like the Bill Nye of the game industry. That'd be cool. I mean, I'm not that perfect of a human being, but hey, I can drink, right? Now, if you maybe, I don't know, feel like sticking around for the actual legitimate first episode, I'd be grateful. Not something anyone needs to do, though, so with that hashtag shameless plug right there, I'm out. Have a nice day, everyone. Unless you're Nintendo, then frankly, fuck you, you dirty little bell drats.